Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe's Shop Shop. This week we're going to give the Toyoace a Toyoface. Alright, so the next job is one that I've been putting off for a long time. I want to try and get the grill on and then try and make a bumper that fits or modify the one that I've got to make it look better and fit properly. So because I've added this 3 inches here, the bumper originally only covers this little piece here. So the grill comes to about there. And then I've got sort of 3 inches of exposed this guy, which I don't really want. And then also you can see through here and you can see the top of the chassis rail. So what I want to do is make the bumper either thicker or put a piece on it or something. I'm not really sure, but I'll start with this grill, get that in the right spot, and then I can work out how much gap I actually have to fix. So to get this grill on, there's a broken stud up here, and then the other 3 bolts are all good to go. So I'll just try and get this one out and then put the grill on. So that should be hopefully pretty easy. Well, you got to get lucky sometimes. I just undid that from the back with a shifter and it pretty much fell off. So now I need to find 4 matching bolts that actually thread in, and then I'll grab this grill and chuck it on. Alright, so the thread came out really easily, and then I had to pull all the nuts, the captive nuts, out the back. So a little bit awkward. I've just got some bolts going through with a nut on the back at the moment. That's the first time I've had the grill on it since I've owned it. It's been 2.5 years or something. I've never seen this thing with a grill, and it looks really weird. So I think I'll probably end up making this a little bit darker somehow, maybe just fog some black over it or something like that later. But for now, I need to make this bumper cover all of this. So the original bumper mounts off of these 4 bolts, so 2 there and 2 over there, and it'll be nice and low. But because we've lifted the cab 3 inches, I need to make that bumper cover that 3 inches. So what I'm thinking is mount the bumper higher, so it'll actually be still in the same spot relative to the cab, but higher on the chassis, and then make a small like drop down type thing that comes down and covers the original chassis rail and where the bumper would have been, and then just kind of kicks back up. So that's probably a little hard to understand, but I'll get the bumper, I'll try and get that mounted up, and then I'll try and show you what I want to do with this little extra piece. Alright, so I was trying to work out how to make this look nice. So I had to get the big brain energy out, so I called Emily, got her to come help me. So what I'm going to do is try and add this piece on the bottom here. It's about 100mm, and then from the corner of the chassis angle it up, and then put a return on the bottom of here, the return on the bottom of there, and a return along the whole way across the top. So it'll be like a whole separate bumper underneath, and then I'll put it in and then probably end up bending both bumpers to suit the front of the cab a bit more. And then if that looks bad, I can weld the whole way along the top and smooth it all off so it looks like one piece, which I don't want to do, but we'll see how we go and how it looks. So what I'm going to do is get a piece of RHS and chop it up and hopefully end up with something that resembles what I just said and what's made in paper. Alright, so I've transferred it onto the piece of RHS. So I need to cut a big chunk out of here, and then I'll put some reinforcements back in later. Same on the other end. And then up the top here, I want to cut pretty much where my fingers are backwards off. So that should be good. So I'll chuck it in the bandsaw to start us off, and then I think it's going to be a whole bunch of time on the grinder. We'll see how we go. Alright, so I managed to get that off in one piece, which is pretty cool, and it didn't really take that long. So I'll chuck this on the front of the car and see how it looks. Alright, so I chucked both on, I've got a photo, and now what I want to do is I've cut this bumper, the original one, and tried to kick in the ends a little bit, try and make it fit a little bit nicer, and try and make it a little bit less obvious that it's in the wrong spot, because it should be higher and further back as far as I can tell, and I just don't love it. So got that bend in there, it will fit nicely, but the actual whole bumper is a little bit too narrow to curve around this panel here, because this curve is in further than this curve. I imagine because it's probably supposed to sit under here and then like tuck it in a little bit more, but then on some spaces and stuff, so it's a bit weird, bit awkward. So I'm kind of tempted to cut the whole thing in half and add like 30 or 40 mil in the middle and get it to curve around those front quarters. And then the bottom half actually fits pretty good. I just need to bend some stuff and then weld it together. But I want them to sit flat with each other, so that's going to be a bit awkward. So I need to get the bottom half of the new bumper in further, and then this guy probably out a little bit more to meet up in the middle. So I think probably cutting this in half is going to be the go. But that's a commitment that I'm not ready to make just yet, so I'm going to keep thinking about it, and I'll jump into the work once I worked out what I'm going to do. Alright, so I think what I'm going to do is make the bottom half fit, because I know where that needs to go, and it only has one spot that it can fit, and it fits pretty well already. So I'll make that fit nicely. Ignore this original top half of the bumper bar for now. Put the bottom half on, get it all nice, and then that will give me a bit more to mount off of when I get to this guy, and then I can have a bit of time to think whether I want to widen it or not. Because I could cut it, there's actually a fair bit of damage just here. So I could cut a chunk out of there and actually make that chunk wider with some new steel and make that problem go away. Or I can do it behind the number plate and hide it with the number plate. So not sure. So I'm going to do the bottom half first, and then we'll get into the top when I get there. Alright, so I've let my creativity flow a little bit. So these big thick straps are just decoration really, but I'm going to use them to bolt the two bumpers together as well, so they are going to be useful, but they're very thick and a nice hefty bend purely for decoration. So they're going to go on there like that. I can cut the damage out there and get that to sit nice and flat, and then put some big bolts through the front, and then big bolts through the front and a little nut on the back, and that'll sort all that out. Then once I put the plate in the middle, this one's from my crown from like 10 years ago. So that's going to go there and should tie it in a whole lot better. Obviously I'm going to have to paint or rust or something this bottom one. But once that's all attached, that will be the center section square together, and then I can just focus on the outsides and bending those a little bit. And then I want to put a plate on the bottom of here to like give that some heft, so it's going to look real beefy, but it's only basically just sheet steel. So I think that's going to look pretty good, and I've got a pretty cool idea for the big bolts as well, so I'll show you that. So conveniently, going through my bolts, I have most of them laid out. So I wanted a nice big head like that through the front of that strap, through the bumpers, so 4 of those on either side, but I don't really want to deal with this, and it's also going to be really awkward on the back side trying to put the nut on. So what I think I'm going to do is, say, grab one of these little Allen key bolts, which is nice. That's a pretty manageable size, but it doesn't look right. And then grab a massive nut and weld that in there. So you end up with what looks like a massive head on a nut, and it can grind it back so it looks like rusty and stuff. And then this side will just be the nice little thread. You can still use the spanner on the outside of this, and you can just use the little nut, and it's a bit more manageable. So I think that'll look pretty cool, and it will tie in like with the big thick strap and big thick bolts and all that sort of stuff. It should tie it all together nicely. So I think I'll do that. Alright, so I just realised I have to go, but here is the concept. So put the little bolt in there, put the big nut over the top. That keeps it all square, and this center's pretty good anyway. And then I'll weld all in there, fill all that with weld, and then grind it reasonably smooth. And then that can be my massive bolt with a tiny thread. So that's going to be another day, because I have to run off. But it's starting to get the picture now, and I'm starting to like it. I've gotten this far and I wasn't sold, but now I kind of am. So pretty cool. And then the number plate in the middle should, just blend it all in, I think. I think it'll look pretty good. It's going to be a fair bit more finessing on the ends when I'm done with that center section, but for now, that's pretty good. And then I did realise the grill can actually go up the other way if I decide that I don't want a happy face, I want a sad face. So I'll decide with that later. But for now, I gotta go. Alright, so I've been on night shift for the past week, and I'm finally off of it, so now I can get back into this thing. So I'm going to pick up where I left off and make these bolts. Weld this nut onto the smaller bolt, make a bigger head, and then bolt the bumper all together. So I'll crack the welder out and we'll get started. Alright, so they're all welded and ground back and still kind of warm, but you can see the porosity, or whatever it's called, the little holes. So I'll probably weld those again and grind them back again. So the next step is to drill some holes in these uprighty guys, and then those bolts can go through and hold it all together. So I'm going to start with this side, get these two attached to each other, and then move to this side, get those two attached to each other. So I'll rip all this off, put it on the bench, drill some holes, and hopefully it'll just bolt together. Alright, so as per usual I forgot to film, but that's the rough idea. So these are all just quickly hand tightened, and then I'll do the same thing over here, and it should look pretty beefy, pretty bulky, and hopefully tied in with the rest of the truck. We'll see. So now I need to pull that one off, put them back to back, drill through so the hole spacing is the same, put that one on there, bolt, drill through all of that, bolt all that together, and then trim them so they're the right length, and then do the next thing, which should probably be mounting it, I guess. So I need to make some mounts for this thing to actually get it on the truck. So I'll chip along with that and hopefully be done pretty soon. And there we go. That looks pretty at home, I think. So those bolts are a bit weird, I know, but I think it's pretty good. I need to trim the bottom of those two straps a little bit, then probably also put a bolt through the end here because it's got a bit of a flexibility there. Box in the bottom of all of that piece of RHS so it looks nice and thick, and then just make it actually mount and tidy it all up. So then patina on the bottom one because it looks kind of out of place. But I think that's pretty cool. I think that works alright. Pretty happy with it. Fits reasonably good. Good enough. Alright, so now that I'm happy with the bumper and how it's all sitting, I need to actually mount the bumper to the car. So that's just sitting there. It needs to actually be bolted on. So what I'm going to do is get some angle lining off the back of these bolts here and into the original chassis rail, and then put some bolts in from the side. So I need to take this off, measure all that up, cut some angle line, and drill some holes, put it in. Alright, so I've got an offcut of angle line here, so the plan is to drill some holes through that, bolt it into the bumper like that, and then when you come up to the car, it'll slide in like that and have some nuts welded to the back of this, so you can put a bolt in through here. So I need to get that situated, and then get the other side situated, and then measure off of the bumper and transfer that measurement onto the two pieces of angle line, and then we can bolt it all together. So I need to cut two of these that fit in there, and then do a whole bunch of measuring. Alright, so I've got the 90s in there, they're just clamped into place, and I've got some bolts through them roughly. No nuts or anything yet. So now I have a fixed measurement, so I can pull this thing out and I know how wide it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do next is measure the bolts on there, transfer that to these angle lines, and then drill through them. Then they should be able to bolt to the bumper. The bumper should then have the angle line attached and go into the chassis rail, and I should be able to get the bolt in. So that's the plan for now, and then I'm going to weld some nuts on the back of this thing so it's a bit easier. Alright, so that's the brackets drilled out. So this is the bumper side, that's the chassis side. So it's going to be a bit awkward to get a nut on the back of the bumper side, but we'll see how we go. I'll try and bolt these to the bumper now and see if it still fits. Alright, so I've got the bumpers on. They are attached to the angle line, and then the angle line is slipped into the end of the chassis. Unfortunately, once I bolted it all up, it has to sit forwards a little bit, so there is a bit of a gap along here, but I'm not rebuilding it for 10mm. Normally I would, but it's a farm truck and it's farmy enough. So I need to work out how to get some bolts into the chassis rail, I guess. So there's going to be a nut on the inside and a bolt on the outside. Unfortunately, those holes didn't line up perfectly, so I had to elongate them a little bit with the die grinder. But now I need to try and work out how to get the nut in the right spot. So whether I make a little plate with two captive nuts and then leave that kind of free in there and hope I can line it up afterwards, or what, I'm not sure yet. So I think I'll probably end up welding the bumper end of the angle line. I'll weld the nuts to the back of that so I can put these on afterwards. And then if I do that, I can probably get the plate in the back and the nuts started, bolted all together, and then do the nuts up from this side afterwards. That probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's the only way I can think of doing it at the moment. So I'll come up with a plan and I'll do the thing. Alright, so some thinking and some working has happened. So I've welded those nuts to the back of those little brackets there, and I made these little brackets which have a nut on either side, and they're welded on as well. So the idea is I unbolt this, put that bracket in here, then put that welded plate with the nuts in the back of here, loosely bolt that up, then put the bumper on and bolt that up to the front, and then once it's nice and tight on the front I can do these side ones up from the outside. So it's going to be a bit fiddly, but I think it'll work. I'll put you on hyperlapse just because it could be fun. Let's see. Nice and sturdy. So I need to remove this thing because it's for the number plate and I don't like it there. And I need to fix the ends because they are still pretty flappy. So I need to reinforce all here and then match the bottom one to the top one, and then put a plate on the bottom to make it look all beefy. So that will be a bit of fiddling, but I'll do that next, and then trim everything up, make it all look nice. So I'll get onto that now and we'll see how we go. Alright, so to strengthen these ends, there's a gap through here that I had to cut that dent out. So now what I want to do is get this where I want it, and then weld a piece back in there. So I've just got a little piece of flat bar, I'm just going to chuck it under the back here, weld it through this hole here, weld that line there, and then probably take this off and weld the other side. So it should be pretty okay. It'll look a bit rough, but that's kind of the point, as I've said a million times. And then this one I've just cut with the grinder, so I can actually just crimp it to where I want and weld that gap back up. And that'll be the top bumper all done. So then for the bottom bumper, I'll bend it to match the top one, put a bolt through and hold them together. And then I just need to reinforce that bottom section. So should be pretty sturdy. If I hit something, I'm kind of in trouble anyway. So it's just that middle section that's nice and strong. Alright, after struggling for ages, I realised I could take the grill off, which made life a lot easier. So I've welded that boogery stuff back together. There's some flat bar in there, make it nice and sturdy. And then I've just quickly clamped these together so they're on the same angle. Got about a finger width of gap here. So then if I copy that to the other side, about a finger width of gap here, and then I need to weld that up and then bolt them together. So it's coming along pretty good, and I think that'll work alright. I also cleaned up this strap while I was in there, cut it to length and just rounded the edges and stuff. So I'll do this side now, and then I still need to do the ends of this one and weld that in, bolt the two together, and then just patina that bottom one, and then we're all done. Alright, and there is the other side trimmed up, welded, and a nice little gap. So it's about the same on either side, maybe a little bit off, but that's fine. So now I just need to plate the bottom and patina that thing up, and then we're good to go. So that'll be another day, but that's where we're at. It's all clamped into place, so it all looks how it should look from this angle anyway. Just need to put those big plates in the bottom and chuck the grill back in. So pretty happy with it so far. Alright, it has been absolutely weeks since I touched this thing. So what I need to do still is attach these two bumpers together and then put a small plate on the bottom of there just to make that nice and sturdy and also look a bit more rigid from the side. So I need to do that on both ends, and then this is pretty much done for now. I'll chuck the grill back on to get the complete picture, and then down the road I need to make these two blend into each other. So whether that's paint or rust or whatever I can do, that'll be a later job. Harley, say hello. Say hello to everybody. Alright, so that's a pretty simple job. Just chuck a drill through there, put a bolt on. So now I can get rid of the clamp and that thing will stay nice and flush with the bumpers. So the next job would be to cut this to length and weld that guy on there on the underside. So I'll do that shortly. I'll just jump over there, do the drilling and the bolt on that side, and then I can cut these to length and weld them on the bottom. Alright, so that's the angle line just clamped in place, so you can see it's going to make it look like it's a whole lot thicker. So now the plan is to just weld these two together, put a bit of a weld down the bottom here, just make it attach and look like it's in the right spot. So I'll get the other one cut up and mounted in place, and then I'll crack the welder out and tack these on. Alright, so I got the bumper pretty much done now. Just need to paint it, make it look like it fits. So I ground back the galv a little bit in hopes that it'll rust or something, and then knock most of the flaky stuff off the top bumper. So I think if I were to fog both of these with some paint, it should come up pretty similar, hopefully. But it's all welded, all good, and then I've knocked the number plate mount off the top. So I'll mock up a number plate, drill some holes for that, and mount that guy as well. Then a later date I'll paint the whole lot. Probably the grill as well, and then it'll all be in place. So I'll chuck this back on, drill the number plate. Alright, a bunch of measuring, a couple of holes, a couple of nutserts. Let's chuck this plate on. Alright, there we go. So got the bumper back on, grill back on, got the number plate mounted. It all looks pretty happy. I'm still not super stoked with the bottom half of the bumper not suiting the rest of the car. I did buzz it back with the angle grinder a little bit just to try and get some of the galv off, so it should rust a little bit, and then I can probably just fog, say, the two bumpers and the grille, just fog them with a bit of black or a different colour, and just try and blend them in a bit better with the rest of the truck. So I think it looks pretty good, and I'm going to call that done for now at least. Alright, so there we have the bumper all finished up for now. It's taken me weeks to do this thing. I don't know why. I've just not been interested in any of the process, to be perfectly honest. I think we got a pretty good result in the end, but it does need to be sort of fogged together to make it all look like it fits properly. So I hope you enjoyed the progress and the adventure that was the front bumper. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.